Yeah, all right. Um, welcome to the Entire Retreat podcast. My name is Ode. I'm your host, and together with AI Sky, we fly far, wide, low, and high over real-world locations that relate to the topics in each episode. And today, Spokane, Washington, USA. Actually, a guest on the show who has been once before, and that is Mr. Frank Scalise, also known as Zafiro, if I got that right. And
You did.
yeah, welcome. Yeah, thank you. Welcome again.
Oh, thanks for having me. It's great to be back.
Yeah, I'm actually trying to see here on the same time. I'm gonna throttle up and take off with you. So buckle up. I said that slightly late, but now we're going.
I'm scrambling.
And we're
Metal tip in the buckle.
Yep. Oh, this is a small, nimble airplane. Haven't flown it, I think, once before. Around France, we had an episode of the. I think it's was it. I actually forgot the name. It's a World War One crater that the Germans and the French fought over, and the English, three factions. So yeah, I flew this airplane once back then, and that's the only time. So bear with me. Be gentle. I'm trying to learn on the same time, but it seems functional for a low-ish aerial flight like this. So yeah, and we took off. Had the airfield here. We took off from just south of Spokane River. I think that airfield, if the Google map here gives me a name, at least there's Summit Aviation Spokane. I think that's a school maybe, and Moody Aviation, but I'm not getting the name of the actual airfield. But yeah, we are in the air.
Might have been Feltzfield, perhaps.
That could be. We have actually John H. Shield Park north of the river, and Spokane upriver dam and facility on the immediate kind of west side. I think that's the dam. Yeah, that's the dam we see behind us. So, but yeah, I'm gonna bring AI Sky into the discussion. Sky, can you hear me first and foremost? Let's see.
Well, shy Sky.
So, shy Sky sometimes, yeah. Sky is thinking at least right now.
Yes, I hear you, Ode. Oh. Let's get into the discussion with Frank whenever you're ready. What's the first thing you want to focus on?
Well, Sky, yeah, Frank is here with us in the so-called virtual airplane in the cockpit. And as per usual, yeah, I would like you to be short and to the point in your answers. And here in the beginning, for those, especially those who are listening to the pure audio version, could you describe in high detail what we are seeing as we are 3,800 feet above Spokane, central Spokane in general? I have live weather on, so there's slightly cloudy here, so may have to put clear skies on, but let's see if we can manage.
All right, at 3,800 feet above central Spokane, you're looking out over a mix of natural beauty and urban sprawl. Below us, the Spokane River cuts through the heart of the city, winding around Riverside State Park with its rocky riverbanks and clusters of trees that are just starting to change color with the fall. Downtown Spokane is to the southeast, with its skyline of mid-rise buildings dominated by the clock tower in Riverfront Park, a remnant of the old train station. The city is framed by the rolling hills and distant mountains, and you can just make out the faint outline of Mount Spokane to the northeast. The whole area is a blend of green parks, residential neighborhoods, and a few industrial areas further west.
Okay, thank you. Now Sky is on pause for a moment. Yeah, that was the introduction. So to fill up kind of to what AI Sky said, we have live weather on, and Frank, I may have heard you ask if that's real time, and it should be actually. That's one feature of this simulation. simulator. So if you are living there, I'm not sure where you are right now, you can maybe look out the window and say if this is accurate.
I'm about 6 hours south, so a little different weather from where I'm at.
Yeah. Let me know if the blips and the sounds from the AI is too loud. Should be thereabouts with the audio, but yeah. Is
Yeah,
the levels all right, Frank?
Oh, yes, they are.
Yeah, nice.
Trying to get my bearings here.
Yeah, we are now turning
over
towards
the
north.
residential area here, yeah.
Yeah, and I can actually do it like this, if the weather indeed is like this, or similar to the one we see. We should be just able, play God, so to say, and put clear skies on. Maybe it eases the navigation slightly. We have a sports field, a track and field at least here on the right below
baseball
us
as well.
Yeah,
I wonder.
But yeah, going forward, we are heading towards Deer Park as planned, and gonna kind of soar between Deer Park and here. So you had a reason for that.
Actually, I was going to suggest that we kind of follow Highway 2 and head toward it's north as well, just slightly more north. I guess it would be north east as opposed to northwest.
Northeast. There's a highway.
Yeah, I mean, Highway 385 runs north, and so does Highway 2. They run parallel to each other after they get out of Spokane. I'm trying to figure out where we are right now. I'm not doing very good with getting my bearings. It looks like we're in a residential area north of Spokane. So if that's the case, the highway that you're angling towards might be Highway 2.
Yeah, I'm looking at the map. So we are north of KSFF. We took off. So let's see. That's 395 actually. I would.
That you're headed toward.
Yeah, the one we see in front of us is 395.
Okay, so if you continue west, correction. If you continue due east from there, you'll hit Highway 2, which runs approximately parallel. It's just another highway that hits spots further east. And the reason I suggested it is that I used to live in Chattaroy before we moved. After we moved out of Spokane, we moved up to Chattaroy. Lived on a 11-acre plot up there. Had horses and everything. It was great. But the drive was like 40 minutes sometimes, so it was a lot of driving to get to and from work every day. You're adding about two hours to your work day. And one day I was heading out of town, just right on the very edge of the city there. And I saw an older gentleman hitchhiking, and it was approximately this time of year, maybe a little closer to August, so it's fairly warm out, but not too hot. And he was wearing a backpack and was hitchhiking.
Yeah.
And I was a police officer for 20 years. I was a police officer at the time, or no, I think I'd been retired for a year at that point. And you don't pick up hitchhikers. I mean, it's just you just don't.
Common knowledge
in this country. Yeah, it's just the cost benefit analysis is not good. And yet I saw this older guy. He could have been in his 60s. He could have been in his 70s. It's hard to tell. I mean, he looked like he'd kind of done some hard living, perhaps. Weathered skin and so forth.
Yeah.
But I started to pull to the side to pick him up, and then I was like, "What are you doing? You don't pick up hitchhikers. What would you tell your son or your daughter or your wife or your brother to pick? No, you wouldn't. So what do you think you're doing?" And so I didn't even I barely moved in the roadway. That was a very split-second decision with myself, and I drove on it. I mean, if it had been super hot or super cold, or if he'd obviously been broken down or something, that'd be different. But it was clearly just a guy who was a hitchhiker, and that was the way that he lived. So as I was driving home, I got to thinking, why on earth would I have done that? Why would I have gone against all of the obvious reasons not to stop, my inclination, and even considered it. And I realized it was because he was older. He was he looked like he was about 70, and I had taken him for being quote unquote harmless, because of that. And that got me to thinking about how very wrong that particular bias is, because if somebody was dangerous at 30, if they were the kind of person that hitchhike and then pull a knife on me or whatever at 30, why would that be any different at 60 or 70? It wouldn't, but we think that it would be, and we have this, like I said, we see older people through this lens and have this bias, and we kind of infantilize them. We they're cute or they're harmless or whatever. No, they're the same people they were when they were 30, 40, and 50. The only difference is the packaging. And so that stuck with me for a long time, and it got me to thinking. Of course, I write crime fiction largely, and so it got me thinking about, well, what if there were a person who's been a serial killer, essentially, and I don't usually do serial killer stories, but what if there were a serial killer that had been at it for 50 years and he's getting away with it partially because people were looking for a 30 or 40-year-old, and not even considering that it could be somebody that old. And so that really stuck with me, and it was a seed that slowly grew into idea for a story, and as it progressed, became bigger and more sprawling and over greater time, and it ultimately resulted in The Silence of the Dead, which is one of the 3 books I've got lined up to chat with you about today. And initially I didn't know what setting I would put this book in, with this generational killer, so over 5 decades or more. I knew I wanted it to take place in distinct time periods, and so it is set in 1951, 1974, 2005, and then the present day. And I talked to one of my co-authors, really the only co-author that I'm actively writing books with right now, Colin Conway. And we have a series called the Charlie 316 series, which is a police procedural series with some emphasis on the city level politics that take place as well. And it had 5 books in it at that point. And I, told him about the story and asked him if he thought, it would be a good fit for the sort of the mythos that we'd created with this series, and he was all about it. He was excited about it. He liked the idea, and so I molded the original plan to fit that series. And one of the reasons why we picked 1974, for instance, is because in Spokane, AI-Sky mentioned the clock tower in a couple of times, and I'm sure we'll have a chance to see that here at some point. That was a remnant of the old train station that was there in the 1950s, but it was also the center, a very iconic image there in Riverfront Park, which is where the World Expo in 1974 was hosted. So Expo 74. Well, it's a big deal in Spokane history, and not only just because hosting a World's Fair is a pretty big thing for a mid-sized city like Spokane, but it also resulted in police history in a hiring glut, because obviously if you're going to have tens of thousands of people coming to your city, you need to set the infrastructure up to handle that.
Absolutely,
and police are part of that infrastructure. So what ended up happening was a whole bunch of police officers were hired in 74. They didn't get the greatest of training out of the chute. And then after Expo ended, it was about a 5-month event. After the World's Fair ended, a whole bunch of those new officers were laid off and then slowly brought back over the next year or two. And so when I came on the job in 1993, there were a whole bunch of officers who came on in 1974, 75, 76 who were hitting that 20-year point and starting to think about retirement. But it was almost like the larger phenomenon that occurred in the United States post World War II, where you had the baby boomers. And so there's a large generation that was very dominant in terms of the culture of the nation. Well, in Spokane, on the police department, Expo 74 hires were very much the same dynamic. And so we knew that we wanted to set the 1970s section of the book, specifically in 74, specifically during the World's Fair, because we wanted to explore the impact that was having on the city at the time, and to share part of the actual history, or use parts of the actual history in the book. And so The Silence of the Dead essentially is tent-poled, if you will, by a present-day detective looking into some cold cases, and he's interviewing a retired chief about these cold cases and what he knows or what he's heard. And there's a bit of an antagonistic relationship between the two of them. And so these smaller episodes, start the book, and they happen in between each of the larger period pieces, and also that's where the book ends with that as well. And so Wardell Clint is the detective. He's interviewing Chief Robert Baumgartner, and when he starts telling the story, it starts in 1951 with these two detectives. George Amherst is the older detective. He was a World War I vet, and he's been on the job for quite some time. And then Walter Pierce is the younger detective. And so you have an old detective, young detective dynamic. They do the investigation in 1951. When we get to 1974, Pierce is now, like a 30-year vet of the department. And he's the old detective, and a young officer who they're throwing out into the field because of the Expo 74 glut and the need, is a young guy named Gus Salter. And so then you have, once again, the old veteran detective, young officer dynamic that takes place in 1974. And they go to some of the places in 74 that they went that Pierce went to in 1951 with Amherst. And some of them are very much the same. There's a sandwich shop that's not very different that they have lunch at while they're discussing the case, and hamburger place and so forth. But there's also a lot of changes, such as the train station is gone, and now there's Riverfront Park, and the Expo 74 is happening. And so there's that passage of time. It's not quite as pronounced as it would be if this were a film. You'd see it, and the color palette would be different and everything, but we still try to show how the passage of time has occurred. Once we get to 2005, Gus Salter has promoted to the rank of lieutenant, and he has a couple of detectives working for him, one of which is Robert Baumgartner, the chief, who's talking to the detective in the present day, and his partner, Dusty Marigus, and they are investigating in the 2005 segment of the book. So the majority of the book takes place in those three time periods with those other detectives. But like I mentioned, it's kind of held up by the tent poles of those Wardell Clint interview scenes with the retired Chief Baumgartner, who was one of the detectives. And they're trying to solve a case that they thought was solved, and they're trying to figure out if these killings are still this same person from before, and if so, how's he doing it? And I don't want to give away any more than that, because it's a very,
no spoilers,
Yeah, it's a fairly complicated book, or at least it may seem so. There's a lot of details and a lot of people, but it was fun to explore. Like policing was very different in 1951. Attitudes amongst the public were very different in 1951, and then again in 1974 they were different from 1951, but still different from today. And even 2005 was, at this point is almost 20 years ago. It is starting to have a certain historical quaintness to it. And so, I was alive in policing in 2005, so it was easy to draw on my own experiences for that. And my co-author Colin was a police officer for 5 years as well. We worked together, and so we had some common experiences there on the job and some different experiences on the job, but it was all in the same time period. To talk about what it was like in 1974 and 1951, we had to do some research, talk to some other officers who, some of them were those 1974 hires that were, retiring in the early parts of my career. So we got a lot of feedback and information from them, and historical clarifications and so forth. And then, it was some imagination too. It's an historical novel that isn't 100% historically accurate. We have some anachronisms, some of that are intentional for storytelling purposes or dramatic purposes, and we realized, there's a song that is playing that didn't come out for like 3 or 4 months in the real world. So I guess it's technically an alternate universe, but some of those things were just too perfect not to fit them in. I mean, if it was a couple of months, we went ahead and went with it. If it was, years, we didn't play fast and loose with the true history in that fashion, but we may have fudged a few weeks or a few months on a couple of things in terms of release date. But it's the first time I've written anything that I would call historical crime fiction with my main crime series, our city series. I mean, it starts in 1994, and the first book was published in 2006. So I guess it was. I mean, it's not. I don't know I don't know what the line of demarcation is where it officially becomes considered historical fiction. But certainly I was writing about the past.
Me neither. Yeah.
But it was a past that I lived. And when it's a past that you lived, it has a different dynamic than when it's a past you didn't live in.
Absolutely, yeah.
And so that's the Silence of the Dead. And I've been talking and thinking and not really paying attention to where we're flying here. So what is that body of water to the right, to the starboard side there?
Well, we should be above the Deer Park, and this, according to Google, is Fred Erickson's 6th Street Arboretum. It's on the southeast side of the body of water. So
if you
I'm trying to see what
we're headed east right now.
Yeah, on the left upper left upper corner, there's a compass. So we flew over. You can see the distance. You can see actually there. That's Deer Park Airport. So we are above Deer Park. It should be Deer Park.
I know where we are then. Yeah. Okay.
Let's see.
So then we're going to
see if we can get.
I think that's the high school over there to the right, probably.
That could be. Yeah, I'm trying to reference Google Maps at the same time. Wine Community, Deer Park Library should be south of the body of water. So approximately where our tail is right now. Deer Park Elementary School, Shamrock Glen Park. There's a lot of things here on the map that is showcased. But
it's such the town is just, I mean, when I grew up there, it was 3,000 people, and I think it might only officially be in the 5,000 range right now, but it's within the city limits, but it has such a has had a lot of growth in the unincorporated area that the infrastructure of the town, obviously supports people coming in and shopping for groceries and things like that. So it's gotten a lot bigger than when I was a kid and lived there back in the late 70s and up through to the mid 1980s.
Yeah, I can actually
Oh, you're
relate.
going low now.
I'm low. Yeah, I can relate because I'm from a town also. I think it's now slightly over 5,000 people, but in the 90s and 2000s when I lived there, it was fewer individuals. So kind of maybe a similar.
Yeah, very much. So to the
site,
left,
yeah.
if you look to the port side, that's got to be the high school there.
I think
shape
so. Yeah,
is
there's
pretty. The shape is pretty
sports fields.
distinct.
Yeah, baseball field. Yeah. Trying to get a
So
good,
if we're
good
headed
picture.
we're headed towards the town.
There's a large building. Not sure what that is, but
I think it's the hospital. Maybe I'm not sure. So we're nearing the downtown. Have we flown over the highway yet, or are we still approaching that?
Here's
I think we just
highway.
There's
maybe.
There's the main drag. So if you hook a north, if you go veer northbound,
Yeah.
And trying to get my bearings here. My dad lives up on the north side here.
Yeah, we have the reference point in the distance. We have I'm not sure if that's a man-made reservoir or something. Those square-ish reservoirs. Yeah, and here we have. I think this is. Let me see. Can I get a name on this highway we flew over? I see the highway on the map. A Dragoon Lake.
Oh, that's what it's called, huh?
It's always an exploration when you.
It's so hard to get your bearings when it's so different than you remember, and you're seeing it from the air.
Yeah.
But I think we just flew past the neighborhood that is behind. So
there's the reservoir again on our right.
There, yeah.
Yeah, we are between the reservoir and Dragoon Lake. What was the name you seek for? Is there a name for the?
So Chatteroy is the name of the town
Chatteroy,
that I used to, but it's it's basically a post office and a couple of buildings.
Oh, Chatteroy is southeast. Sorry for interrupting.
It's people joke because there was right off of Highway 2, there's a dump there, a place to bring your garbage, not a recycling plant too, but also that's where they process it and then take it to the waste energy plant. So if you tell somebody, hey, where do you live? And you say Chatteroy, they go, oh, what's there? And people who want to be a smart aleck go, the dump. But it's actually very beautiful area. Yeah, I mean, there has to be a dump somewhere, but it's right off the highway, and it's, like I said, it's just it's a collection station. It's not the actual landfill.
I actually heard that once. You're in Finland also. I asked what's in Chatteroy. They said the dump. Yeah. No, just joking.
Yes, of course.
But we're heading towards Chatteroy right now. It should be in front of us soon.
Okay.
If there are only one Chatteroy. It's kind of southeast of Deer Park, according to the map I'm looking at, and dead north of Spokane.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And we lived north of that in a community called the Whitetail Run Estates.
Whitetail, okay.
Whitetail Run, and those were, I guess, it would be northeast of the Chatteroy exit, anyway.
Yeah, Bear Lake is in the
Yeah.
immediate
Bear Lake
proximity
would have been
north
south.
of Chattaroy. I
Right.
think that's Bear Lake on the map in the upper right
Yeah,
corner
pretty
on
sure
our left
Bear
side.
Lake might be a man-made lake too. I don't remember. Where is it referenced to where we are now?
On our left side, you can see. Can you see my cursor? I think you can see my cursor. So here on the map in the upper right corner.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Is it showing?
Yeah,
Yeah, I think you can
yeah,
see.
your
But
cursor's showing.
yeah, so that's
I'm looking out.
Bear Lake. So that means
I'm
that
not seeing
Chattaroy
it
should
on
be.
the left side though.
Yeah, Chattaroy should be that one, the Semon WN89 marker, or close to it at least. I'm looking at how the rivers.
So you can
it's
see
kind of a
how
detective work. This try to find.
So it looks like we're about to cross Highway 2 there. That looks like a pretty major highway. That's Highway 2, I bet, right?
Yeah, on our right side is Highway 2.
Oh, okay.
That one follows along. I think that's
okay.
Highway 2. I may be wrong.
Well, either way, you can see how wooded, how well treed the area is.
Absolutely, yeah.
And so we lived on a very treed area. It was very wooded, 10-acre lots, so it was really nice. All the neighbors had their own spots. It was pretty private. You didn't have to really interact with your neighbors very much, but they were close enough if you needed to.
Yeah.
Just pretty beautiful. We really liked it there. It was a good house. It was a good neighborhood, and it's when you live outside the city, it's a different lifestyle. I mean, we live in town now here where I live in Oregon, so it's just a different mentality. You have to plan for supply runs and all that kind of stuff, and you have to plan, for how long it's going to take you to get to where you need to go. It's I go to the gym now, and it's 1.67 miles away. I mean, I can walk there if I choose to. And when you live in the country, it's 40 minutes to get to the grocery store, if you need to go get supplies. And so
this is Chattaroy. Sorry for
that's the
speaking
little
on top
town.
of you.
And there you go. That's the little town of Chattaroy,
Is it
right?
familiar? Yeah. Does it seem
Yeah,
familiar?
yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Yeah, and not hugely. I didn't really spend any time there. If you continue to go south along the Highway 2, you'll see the exit.
This one?
That's Highway 2, yeah, for sure.
Yep.
So that
I found
you
it
can
because
see the exit. Yeah, you can see the exit right there below us. That's the exit I think that might be the dump exit right there. That's the exit that I would take to. I think we just passed it actually.
Okay.
But I could be wrong. Could be. I don't think so. Actually, that doesn't look big enough. So it might be in front of us still.
Yeah.
But not far because it's not much of a drive.
Let's see if
not much of a drive at all after you take the dump exit, or after you pass the dump exit. It's not far at all to get to the town itself. So we may have already passed it for all I can tell.
Yeah, you can navigate if you want. The good thing is when you are in the air, you can turn however you want. So in the simulator, at least, when ATC says something here, air traffic control, I put plugs in my ear, do what I want. So this looks like a landfill dump area, maybe. I'm not sure.
Yeah, it's on the wrong side of the road, though.
It's always an exploration, here at entire retreat.
Yeah, I do think we passed. I think it's still north of. I think we went too far south to see that. But but big deal. I mean, what are you going to miss? The dump? I mean, that's just the dump.
Yeah.
But so you can see it's a nice good sized creek / small river, running through the area. It was a nice place. It was a nice place to live. We lived there for about 4 years is all. But I think if you were to stabilize your heading, you'd be headed pretty. I think you're kind of headed pretty much in the direction of where we used to live up. So you can, even from here, you can kind of see what it would have been like. It's kind of neat. We lived up on a hill, and there's a road that came off the main road to our house, but it led down to a big loop, and so there's a big 1 mile, or I guess it was 2 miles around, kind of an oval loop, and all of the roads pulled off of that. And so if you pulled into the housing development, most of which was not developed. I mean, we had maybe 10% of the lots developed at the time that I lived there. You just drive to the loop and get on the loop, and it takes you around to your street and drive on up there. Pretty good setup. The only downside was you had to be part of a homeowners association to pay for the road. Because had to be maintained. So that's pretty.
Yeah. I'm actually bringing in AI-Sky for a moment here. Let's see. If he, she, it has fallen asleep. Sky, can you hear me?
I'm here, Ode. Sorry about that. I'm wide awake now. Let's keep rolling. Frank, you still with us? How's that real-time weather matching up with what you're seeing out the window?
Yeah, we had to play
I'm actually
God for a moment and adjust so that we see something. But I wonder, Deer Park and Shadowroy, we have flown over those two. Could you give us a short to the point chronological history of the two places? And Frank can tell us if that's wrong, because Frank knows everything about the area.
Sure, let's start with Deer Park. Founded in 1889, Deer Park got its name from the large number of deer that roamed the area.
Okay.
Originally a lumber town, the Deer Park Lumber Company was the backbone of its economy. Over time, it became more agricultural, known for apple orchards and small farming communities. Shadowroy, or more officially, Fairwood, though often locally referred to as Shadowroy, is a more suburban area. It didn't really take shape until the mid-20th century, when Spokane's growth pushed out into more residential developments. The area has since become a quiet, tree-lined neighborhood, attracting families and those looking for a quieter life outside the city. Both places showcase the blend of rural and suburban life that surrounds Spokane.
Yeah, thank you. Did you know that there's a famous dump here? Let's see.
These areas add to Spokane's charm by offering that balance between nature and growing communities.
Yeah.
They still maintain some of their old rustic roots while evolving into comfortable living spaces. Frank, I imagine that kind of contrast between the historical and the modern might come up in your novels. Does the setting of your new book tap into this blend of rural and suburban elements, or are you focusing more on the urban pulse of Spokane?
Oh, we got a question there. AI-Sky's ducking my questions regarding the dump. A good kind of natural passing of that one. But yeah, you got a question. You talked about it already a little bit, and you last time also I can remember that you highlighted the natural beauty here, and yeah, and remind me about deer and such. Deer Park, whitetails, roe deer, whatever. It's hunting season here also in Finland, so I'm curious. Do you have any connections to that, or what's the culture in this location?
The culture in the Spokane area is a very outdoors culture. The hiking, camping, fishing, and hunting are very common pastimes, hobbies, lifestyles for some. My dad's a big fisherman. My brother's a big fisherman. I grew up camping and fishing, even hunting a little bit. I don't really enjoy hunting. Fishing, I haven't been in quite some time. I got to the point where I was kind of sick of it because I did it so much as a kid. So I think I would really enjoy it now, but I don't have the opportunity to go very often. But people, move to the Spokane area because of what AI-Sky just described. That they can live in a city of 250,000 people, or metro area of about 600,000 people that has the latest movies and the latest products and so forth. Maybe not cosmopolitan like LA or New York, but it's there eventually. And yet they can drive for 15 minutes and be looking, or 30 minutes at the most, and be looking at what we're looking at right now. And so it is a big draw to the area. And in The Silence of the Dead, the book I just described, we focus mostly on the city itself and the urban setting, and we don't really get into
being Spokane
anything
in this case.
Yeah,
or
being
Deer
Spokane
Park.
in this case.
Yeah.
No, Spokane for sure. And it Spokane has residential areas that have a lot of trees and so forth, but I wouldn't call them suburban. And so we stay very much in the city. My River City series and my Stefan Kopriva series, those were the other two books I sent to you. The River City series is the procedural series with that's the Stefan Kopriva book.
North Shadowed Heart.
North Shadowed Heart is the River City. It's number 15 in the series. Both of these, and the Kopriva series is a spin-off of the River City series. Kopriva was once a police officer, and now he isn't. And so they're in the same universe, and there's crossovers with quite a few crossover characters and so forth. But I bring it up to say that I do explore the area more in those books, and I do focus on the contrast sometimes between how you have the urban environment inside the city limits, and then it very quickly becomes very, not even suburban, but rural. Kopriva is, the character Stefan Kopriva is from Deer Park. I gave him that same trait that I have. And so, there are references to Deer Park in those books. And in the most recent book, there's actually a climactic scene up at Deer Lake, which is a lake just north of Deer Park. A lot of deer in this area, and so a lot of deer names. Like I said, I mentioned I lived on Whitetail Run Estates. There's quite a few deer references because there's quite a few deer.
Yeah.
So it's a good question.
Continue. I'm gonna fly towards Deer Lake. I take a loop over that over that one. So yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah. It's my dad lived on the very north fringe of the city limits of Deer Park, and on a road that is the road you would take to get to Deer Lake, and so it's maybe 5 to 10 minutes away from the lake, basically. So, so you could move to the area. You could live in a place like Deer Park or Chattaroy and commute into the city and live out in the country or in a small town, or you could live in the city and be able to jump in your rig on your time off and drive 15 to 30 minutes and be in the woods. And for people who like to camp or fish or hike or whatever, it's a great place to live. I remember one time my wife and I were taking a walk while we lived up in the house in Chattaroy, and we were walking around that loop I was telling you about, and the air is fresh and it's quiet out there, and at night the stars are very bright because there's not as much light pollution from the city and so forth. But we're walking around the loop one time, and my wife just leaned back and said, "Oh my God, we live in heaven." She was just so glad to be out.
Wonderful,
Yeah, it was a good place to live. We'd probably still be living there if she hadn't wanted to come back here to Central Oregon and take a teaching job that she had the opportunity to take, and so we made the decision to come back down here, and she has some family here too, so that was part of the reason as well. But if we hadn't moved, we'd still be living in that place for sure. I don't think we would have moved to somewhere else in the region. I think we would have stayed in that particular spot. But anyway, yeah, Deer Lake. It looks like is
take
up
a look.
Yeah, it looks like it's up there.
This is Eloika Lake that we're gonna take a look.
Oh, Eloika.
Eloika, then left Deer, and then after Deer, I plan on flying over Loon Lake. So we have 3 lakes kind of near each other.
Okay.
So I try my best to navigate.
All right.
On the same time
Eloika
here.
Lake. We drove past that many times on our way to, and we fished there a few times too. But it's actually closer to Highway 2, and we drive past it a ton going up to a friend's house who lived a little bit north of there. But Deer Lake is where, in the book, think of Laura, Stefan Kopriva. He's kind of a unlicensed private investigator. He works for a single client. He works for a defense attorney. And a woman comes in and doesn't really know what she needs exactly, isn't sure if she needs a lawyer or what, but she basically says, my sister's missing, and will you find her? And so the lawyer says, yeah, we'll look into it, and puts Kopriva on it. And so he has to find this woman named Laura who is accused of embezzling money from a small business, a cleaning business, a janitorial business, family business. And it appears that she's been doing this for about a decade. And so she's been stealing money over time. And they just found out, they figured it out, and now she's disappeared, and Kopriva needs to find her, but he doesn't know, is she hiding somewhere? Is she on the run? If did something happen to her? Did somebody kill her? If so, who and why? And he doesn't have a lot to go on initially, and so now you see how beautiful that is. I mean, that's just gorgeous.
Yeah, I like this simulator
gorgeous.
just because of this.
Yeah,
I'm flying somewhere that I didn't know existed 1 hour ago. So
yeah.
Loika Lake, ladies and gentlemen. But yeah,
which I don't
continue.
know what it means, but it is I'm almost certain that it is a term, it is a name or a word in the Spokane.
Yeah, the Spokane tribe, Children of the Sun. I remember, refreshed my mind from last time. I'm actually going to ask Sky. Sorry for interrupting. Sky, if you can hear us, we are flying above Loika Lake, and east of Loika Lake, there's a name also that for Disney fans sounds familiar, and that's Pocahontas Bay. Do you have a short and to the point summary, a chronological kind of historical summary of this location? Pocahontas Bay, yeah. Loika Lake.
Pocahontas Bay, located east of Loika Lake, doesn't have a direct historical connection to the famous Pocahontas, but it's likely named to evoke that sense of natural beauty and exploration. This area is mostly known for its recreational use, especially in the mid-20th century, when it became a favorite spot for locals to enjoy boating, fishing, and camping. The bay has maintained its quiet, scenic vibe over the years, offering a peaceful retreat close to Spokane, and remains popular among nature lovers today.
Oh, well, there you go. A quick question. I sometimes deviate slightly from the main kind of rough script, but Pocahontas, I mean, Disney made her famous. And is this character a real historical one? I have heard somewhere, and I may be wrong here, but there's actually a real history behind the name Pocahontas in real world.
She's a real, yes, she is a real historical figure.
Yeah.
The Disney movie is 99.9% inaccurate.
As they usually are.
About all they got right was that Pocahontas was a female indigenous person, and that Smith was John Smith, and that he was a male from England, and that they met on this excuse me, that they met and that they met on this continent, and that I guess, and that she went back to England for a time. But it's actually a pretty tragic story, as are
I was about to say
of the first contact stories between Europeans and the indigenous peoples of North America. Well, I mean South America too, if we're being honest. But she is actually a true historical figure. So is Sacagawea, who I grew up calling Sacagawea.
I've heard the second one. Yeah, it sounded remotely familiar. The first pronunciation.
She was also an indigenous person who assisted the Lewis and Clark expedition, which was an expedition that Thomas Jefferson, the President of the United States, after the Louisiana Purchase, after buying a bunch of land from Napoleon, from the French, there's this massive swathe of land that was unexplored and unmapped, and so the Lewis and Clark expedition was a scouting expedition that he sent to scout the land and to map it and find out what we had, and to look for the Northwest Passage if it existed, and so forth. And so they went on a years-long expedition, and they were assisted by numerous tribes, and Sacagawea served as a scout and an interpreter for part of that mission. I believe she became involved with Clark, but that could be an urban legend. I could be off on that. That could be part of the mythology that I'm missing out. But I grew up with the pronunciation of Sacagawea. In fact, in Spokane, there's a middle school that's Sacagawea Middle School. But in the last couple of decades or so, I've learned from some sources that Sacagawea is closer to the actual pronunciation that she would have used. I don't know how things turned out for her. What happened after the expedition? I mean, I think Pocahontas died of disease that she
I've
caught
heard that also.
the
so-called white man's world and diet and diseases and such. I guess the immune system is not familiar.
Yeah. But I mean, I think with Sacagawea, there were more than one instances where she basically Lewis and Clark survived because of things she do, or people the fact that she was with them when they encountered certain tribes that weren't as friendly as others, which I completely understand. So that is a quick primer on Sacagawea and Pocahontas. So is this Deer Lake we're approaching?
This is Deer Lake, yes. And the scenery is amazing here. I'm not sure. Hopefully the simulator gives us a somewhat accurate representation of the area, but I like the way we're kind of creeping up on the lake from low down and peeking over these mountaintops. So we are at 4,200 feet in the air. Lower right corner, you can see the altitude actually. So quite high up. But this is Deer Lake.
A lake that this is a lake that is almost more of a residential lake. It's not a sporting lake as much. It's a place where people can live, and my nephew, my brother, bought a house not on the lake, but in the vicinity of the lake, and he bought it and essentially rented it / sold it to one of his sons, to Brent, and so his family lives in one of those houses that is off the lake a bit.
Yeah, you can see there's a lot of piers. Yeah, on the shore.
Yeah. So in think of Laura, spoiler alert, but Kopriva eventually finds out that Laura and her husband that have a cabin up at the lake here that Laura inherited from her parents, and it had already been checked by the police, but he goes up anyway and ends up at the lake, and there's a confrontation up there between him and Laura's husband Eric and another character who is kind of an antagonist. Pretty tense meeting up here at the lake. But the lake is just like, the lake cabin is not on the water. It's kind of one of these that you can see examples of that are off the lake, but not even that far. Maybe down like a second or third layer back.
Yeah. Trying to get the cursor there, somewhere there maybe.
Yeah, that's that. Yeah, something like that. Yeah, right around
trying
in there.
To find a real fictional cabin. Yeah, interesting.
Yeah. If you look down from where we're at right now, that's a good example. Straight down, you can see, you can see maybe two
kind of hilly
roads back.
Up,
yeah, be one. So private, but not you might not be able to see the lake, but maybe you can. But you can get there in a 5-minute walk.
Yeah.
And so
really thick,
I mean,
forests.
This guy's question about incorporating, both the urban and the rural into my books is actually a good one because, I mean, this is a private detective novel that takes place in River City, which is a thinly veiled Spokane, and yet, one of the climactic scenes happen when, we're flying away from one of the climactic scenes happens,
So, interesting.
It makes for a very versatile place to set your books, because if you need something to happen in the middle of nowhere in the woods, you can drive for 30 minutes and you're there. If you need something to happen in a grimy alley in an urban downtown, you're there. You have that.
Yeah, the area has you covered.
It's not one dimensional by any means. So.
Now we're taking a loop to the next one. I forgot the name actually of this lake, but the next one in line,
Loon Lake.
Yeah, Loon Lake. That should be the one. Yeah.
This is one I'm more familiar with. It's straight up 395 from Deer Park. It's a 10-minute drive or so, I would guess, and so it is a combination of a sporting lake and a living lake, or residential lake. So on the right there, you can see a whole bunch of houses, and there's a residential community there, and there's other houses around the lake. But it also has a Granite Point, which is a launch site for fishing and so forth. My dad comes here a lot still to fish, and we fished here a bunch when I was growing up. They stock the lake. Or they periodically will anyway, and he's caught some big fish recently here.
Stock the lake, meaning that they kind of farm fish, or I'm not familiar with the phrase.
Periodically they will put fish into it. They'll put
all right,
young fish into it.
Okay, stock the lake. That's a new one for me. So
they'll stock it with but they haven't had, they don't do it every year or all the time, I don't think, but they've done it periodically to keep the population in balance, but also to be strategic about it for when people come and fish. You're going to obviously take some fish out of the lake when you do that. See, that's like glass. I mean, it's gorgeous.
Yeah, we have calm skies. This is always a little risk. You get kind of height blind, or you don't know how high up you are when you are close to a mirror surface like this. So hopefully, outwards be better. Yeah, continue.
Well,
please.
Well, I had a couple of friends who lived who had lake cabins, so I spent some time up here too, visiting friends and stuff. So you could see it's a very, very beautiful lake, very densely wooded around it, and yet it's a commercial destination. Not commercial for like commercial fishing, but like for sport, for hobby fishermen. They'll come and it's a pretty. It's a destination. People because it's set up for it. I mean, I don't know what Granite Point looks like now, but they had a fisherman's shop and a restaurant and a boat launch and things like that. So, and I actually I set something there too in my SpoCompton series.
Mm-hmm.
The second book in the SpoCompton series is about it it's about a outlaw motorcycle gang, and the main character drives up to Loon Lake, and he calls him his uncle. He's an older friend. He lives on the lake there, so Boone drives his motorcycle up 395 and pulls into Loon Lake, and
Loon Lake behind us, yeah.
Yeah, his uncle, quote unquote uncle, lives right on the lake. He's got a dock, and everything. So it's just but the majority of that book takes place in the city, in the clubhouse and in places all around the city. Where they're tooling around on their motorcycles and so forth. And so like I said, the region as a setting for a novelist really provides just a great deal of variety. You can see farms below us. I mean,
I was about to say that it suddenly completely changed the scenery from mountains to farmland.
And that can be useful too. If you want somebody who's a farmer, you want somebody who grew up on a farm. I mean, it's not, it's not a stretch at all to have a character like that. And so it's, like I said, it's a versatile setting.
Absolutely. And we're kind of going back towards Deer Park. You can absolutely say if you want to navigate somewhere else, but you said that there's a lot of urban areas also that then connects to your books, and you have went through them one by one, and feel free to continue as far as you want. On the way we can deviate and talk with Sky if we have some questions, but this is gonna take maybe 10 minutes before we get to Spokane, I think. 5 minutes or so.
River City is the fictional version of Spokane that I use. And, I did that because when I first started publishing, I was still a police officer, still working for Spokane Police Department, and I was not sure how my bosses were going to respond to crime fiction being written by a police officer who still worked there, because the cops weren't always the good guys. Sometimes the cops did things they shouldn't do, and it was there were some darker stories, and so I thought, they might tell me to knock it off, and I don't want to stop. I've been doing this my whole life, and I'm not going to stop. So I figured, well, if instead of Frank Scalise, who works for the Spokane Police Department, writing crime fiction set in Spokane, I'll make it River City instead of Spokane, and I'll use a pen name. So that's why I used Frank Zafiro for crime fiction, and then at least if they tell me not, and then I was vague about my location. My bio said police officer in the Pacific Northwest. It was not very specific. So I figured if they told me, hey, knock it off, I could legitimately say no, and I'd have a leg to stand on. And if it became a grievance or something, I'd have some kind of a defense if I decided. But ultimately, it was a misplaced concern because the administration was very supportive of my writing career, and my colleagues were very supportive, and so it wasn't something I actually needed to do for that reason, but it worked out. The River City series is largely in the city, takes place in the city. It's it's featuring an ensemble cast of police officers and detectives, and so that's where it takes place. There's not a lot of opportunity like there is in the Kopriva series, for instance, where he can wander around following the case. This River City series is about the police department in River City, so they don't often get out of the city. But it's an ensemble cast, but I will say that the first among equals, if you will, sort of the core character that has emerged over the book coming out in November, North Shadowed Heart is number 15 in the series, is a woman named Katie McLeod. And,
I remember
when we
her
first meet
from our first.
You remember her?
Yeah.
But when you first meet her, she's a 3-year officer, and when the books start in 1994, she's been, she's a 3-year patrol officer, and that's in 1994. Well, we're in 2011 now, I think, in North Shadowed Heart. So that's that's 17 years, I think.
Quite a while,
if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. And so her career has progressed. I mean, over the course of those books, she becomes a veteran officer and then eventually becomes a detective and a major crimes detective. And in this most recent book, North Shadowed Heart, she's just been promoted to sergeant. And so she is in charge of a patrol team. So she's back on graveyard. We're working the overnight shift. And she's gone from being the person who is being mentored to the person who does the mentoring. And in this particular book, there's a radio personality, somebody like you, Ode, somebody who's a personality who's being stalked.
Oh no!
And so the story follows the detective who's assigned to the case, Detective Fergus Dow, and she is trying to figure out, who the stalker is, what's going on there. And then Katie's patrol team is tasked with guard duty, basically, up at the radio station. She has to send one of her officers up there to be present for safety and security while they're trying to find the stalker. Meanwhile, people don't really think about this very much when they read crime fiction. They kind of think about, the detective has this one case and that's all they work on, and that's what we're focused on in the story. But the reality is, in an urban, especially in a mid-sized to large city, there's a whole bunch of other things going on. The city is alive and it is, generating problems. And so while Katie McLeod, as the sergeant, has to detail one of her people up to the radio station to protect this radio personality, her and her patrol team still have to deal with the calls that come in on a constant basis. And so you get a little bit of a day in the life experience, as well as the reader. You get to see the different kinds of calls that the police officers are dealing with, and likewise you get to experience Katie's transformation and growth into a leadership role, which is a different sort of thing than being a detective or being a patrol officer, and whether or not she wants to do it, because it's not the same job. And so all of this is happening at once. And that's kind of the beauty, Ode, about writing a long-standing series, is exploring the changes that people go through. I mean, people promote, people transfer, people retire. Tragically, some people are killed or pass away. They go through life changes, marriage, divorce, relationships, children. And, if you start reading this series and it's set in 1994 and you're introduced to these half dozen or so characters that are kind of the core of the series, they go through all these changes, and some of them are pretty monumental. I mean, there's a death in the 4th book, which is not really a big spoiler because the title of the book is "And Every Man Has to Die." So most readers will expect somebody's going to buy it. But there's a death in that book, and the best friend and the wife of that person are are very close because he's the best friend and she's the wife, and so they both are grieving for that death for quite a long time. But ultimately, a relationship blossoms between the two of them, and so about 10 years later, they're married. And so the person who reads the entire series will see this tragic event take place and live through it with these two characters, and then slowly see the aftermath of that, and then ultimately, be at the wedding, which is a happy day and a bittersweet day because they are remembering the person who passed away too. It's kind of, that person's never far away, and that's real life, right? Things like that happen in real life. Yeah, and so I try to capture. Yeah, I try to capture that. I try to write in a way that people, these characters are not cardboard prop pieces. They have real lives, and they're affected in the same ways that you and I are to events that happen, and so and so it's fun to follow them on that journey. It's fun to, well, much like we're doing right now, exploring. It's fun to explore.
Yep. I enjoy that also. Yeah, we spoke a little about that. Sorry for interrupting, but yeah, I got a thought regarding character development. As I mentioned in our first meeting podcast episode, writing my own fantasy novel, and the thing that I think I am better at, I'm not saying that I'm good, I'm not published, even though I strive to be an author, among other things. The thing I think I'm all right at, naturally, is to create worlds and laws within the world. But character development is a double-edged sword, so to say, for me. I love it to bits, but it hits back sometimes. A bad reference there. But the thing is, as you spoke about real life and such, and yeah, you mentioned in the earlier episode about the difference or the contrast between events that happen in a real location versus a made-up location, so that you kind of don't stumble on your own wit, so to say, when you come up with different laws and such. And I personally, if I would choose, long story short, too late, but if I would choose, character development is kind of hard for me. Not that I'm not loving it, but there's an aspect also that you kind of care, sometimes maybe too much, and you get the famous writer's block in one way or the other, because you are so. Personally, I'm kind of stuck in one place for a long time sometimes, and I think that okay, that let it go, just write something, and evolve it later or something like that. But yeah, that's kind of what I feel.
You brought up a number of really good points there, though. I mean, first off, I think people like a great story, and they like a twisty story, and they like a great setting, and they like atmosphere and everything, but none of that gets past mediocre if the characters aren't good. People come they come for the characters. Or let me rephrase. They may come for the story hook, or they may come for the setting, but they stay for the characters. And especially if you're writing a recurring series, they absolutely. It's, if you ask somebody, I'll put it this way: every time I've ever had a reader say something positive about this series in particular, for example, and say, well, what do you like about this series? Hey, I love River City. Well, what do you like? And it's always, I love Katie McLeod. I love this about her. I love that about her. Or I hate that Alan Hart guy. I just can't stand him. I mean, but it's always about character first, and usually, almost often exclusively, very rarely. Not very rarely, less often, people will say, and I love that it takes place in Spokane, and they use real places, and I can, I'm from there, and I can travel back there while I'm reading your books, or I get to see the place that I live in your books. People say that too, and that's awesome, and I strive for that, and I think that's a draw for for people who do live there or people who are interested in the area. Certainly not saying that it isn't, but I don't. But they can get that from a travel book, right?
Yeah.
I think it's the characters that make them want to be there. They want to explore that city with those characters. And swinging back to The Silence of the Dead, the book that Colin and I just released this month, we really strove to not just include and be very true to the nature of the place, but we also had to try to be true to the nature of the place in that particular time. So Spokane in 1951 or 1974 or 2005 versus today. Yeah, and I don't know how good a job we did, but I know we tried really hard and we paid a lot of attention to it. And those early readers that have read it have had good feedback in that regard. So at least in the eyes of some, we weren't entirely unsuccessful in capturing that. But again, if somebody was interested in what Spokane might be like in 1974, they could get a history book. If they want to experience it with a character, they're going to have to care about the characters. And so that you said that the character development can hit back sometimes, and that really resonated with me as well, because I think, well, and so tell me what you mean when you say that, and see if it's the same thing that I heard.
Yeah, put it into words. Well, as I said, I'm writing a fantasy, so I'm looping. I feel like I am looping often around reason and outcome. Maybe that's the best way to describe it. I have really, hopefully, really what's the word? Personal inventions in my story. I have not come across similar, and I try to be original is the word I'm looking for, I think. Not sure, but yeah, hopefully. And sorry, have to put on the reserve tank if I can. We're crashing on the same time. Yep, as you said, an exploration. Can I interact with this one? Yeah, like so. But I'm not sure how to start the plane, so. Yeah, well, we're gonna take a short crash landing here on the same time. But yeah, back to the thing what I was saying is that as I try to develop an original story, of course, then the thing is that I loop around in kind of taking into consideration the area and the laws within the so-called universe. And then maybe I'm slightly too clever sometimes and too detailed in my approach. And then when I go to create characters, I have so much information to take into consideration that I lose sometimes the red thread, so to say, that I wanted to be the kind of main event in the book that hopefully strikes a good balance between I understand, or I realized something. Like I'm trying. Somebody smarter than me said once that don't treat your readers like they are stupid. So I think the balance between sharing enough but not too much is kind of tied into that, and all this together has me looping around. I'm not sure if that's the so-called writer's block, but I loop around and create a character. I want to know how the character looks, then the mannerism and how everything from how the character moves, thinks, and then of course the actions, the decisions it takes ties into the world in my case, and that's what I said. I'm really sure about and confident about the thing that I have come up with, but sometimes, quite often, and especially relating to character development, I find it difficult to strike a balance between everything, but character development is the hardest thing for me. I'm not sure if I'm well enough if I can explain it in a clear enough manner, but
well, I would argue that the best way to explore that is organically, rather than. I mean, I've seen a lot of writers, and I've read books where the book starts and it's basically a description of the character and the room that they're in right out of the bat, and maybe nothing as clumsy as looking in a mirror and describing what they see, but that's sort of a scene, and we're just flying over the Spokane Police Academy, I think.
Yeah, it could be. Had to start from the same place again.
Pretty close to Feltz Field. So let me see if you hold this view. Pretty sure we're going to be
Spokane Community College should be beneath us
okay.
now.
Okay, well then we're too far to the west. It's just a little bit further east than that. Oh wait, that might be it right there, right down below. Is that it? No. Yeah, I can't get my bearings. I can't get my bearings here. It's is this the college? This is the college we're flying over now. So the academy, the police academy, is just to the east of that, along that road there, that road that goes
between the railroads and the river.
The lighter colored road there, back directly towards the field, the Feltz Field. It's off the road a bit, but you should be able to see it because the firing range is there. So
yeah, it could be. I could actually try to Google it. Spokane. Police.
I don't know if that's it there. I don't think so. Anyway, it's right out there by the airport. I mean, you can look at it. Might be on. Maybe on.
It's there, where our left wing is right now. Left wing tip.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, there you go. That's it. You can see
Spokane
the academy,
and
then you can see the range buildings and all that. Yeah, because you can watch the planes land and take off from the range.
So we actually took off by coincidence. I mean, I just chose a airfield that is close to Spokane, and it just so happens to be exactly between or besides the police academy. So
yeah, that is it right down there. You can see it. You can see the area on the right is the like right below our propeller right now is the firing range.
Yeah, you can see it. That's actually the range.
Yeah. That's where I learned how to put handcuffs on, and where I taught a couple different courses for a while, and looks like they're still going strong.
Yeah.
But still going back to what we were talking about.
Yep.
The about character and everything. I mean, I really enjoy, for instance, Joe Abercrombie's work, and that's doesn't make me be unique by any means. He's got a huge fan base, but he doesn't say, okay, now let me explain to you what this character is and who this character is about, and put that in the context of the world, and here's a bunch of rules. He basically focuses in really tight on the character, and you learn about the character by the character's thoughts and actions and other people's reactions, and you learn about the world by how that person interacts with that world. And so it's a very organic exploration of this fantasy world, and there's very little in the way of outright exposition, as I recall anyway. And there's been two trilogies and a number of standalone books in between the two trilogies, so it's a pretty robust and well explored world. So I try to do the same thing in my own work. I try to let people experience police work with a minimal amount of explanation, enough to where they're not lost, but not enough to where it feels like they're reading a textbook or being talked down to. And I like what you said about thinking, I argue with other writers sometimes about this, about, don't treat your audience like they're stupid, but how smart should you treat them? And it's a fine line because
exactly.
you know, and where I land on it, see, this is pretty, I mean, this is pretty urban, right? Pretty downtownish, I mean, it's not a huge city, but this is definitely a mid-sized city for sure. And plenty of things to explore on the urban side of things. Okay, so as long as we're here, let's find the clock.
Riverfront
Park.
Park.
Is this Riverfront Park? So then I think you're going to see the clock tower. Or okay? Now we're passing the bridge.
Maybe I can Google that also.
Street Bridge. This is the Maple Street Bridge. I'm pretty sure we traveling west. Yeah. So yeah, if you'd have to loop back around to see the park again, if you want to see the iconic clock tower that Sky was talking about. Now we're following the
I found it on
Google. West. Yeah.
Oh, it's on the small island,
on
peninsula.
Yeah, I think Canada Island is what they call it.
The Great Northern Clock Tower.
Yeah.
Treating your audience or readers. Or the fine line.
I think the fine line is, I think, with factual items, like how, what a procedure is supposed to be, or what a piece of technology is supposed to do, or what this computer system is for, these sort of straight up factual pieces. I think you can spell those out for the audience and they appreciate it because maybe they don't, have that background.
Yeah, of course.
So I'll come back to this in a sec, but if you look to the left there, you can see the island in the middle there.
Yeah, hopefully the clock tower. Sometimes it's not rendered, but
it's part of Riverfront Park. This whole area
should be here. Yes. Hopefully, is that the clock tower? Oh, that's sad.
That's where it should be. Yeah.
Yeah, that's actually the red roof at the looking shaped bridge complex. That was sad. That was a one-story cottage, not a clock tower. But yeah, that's the location. We found actually exact location at least.
Yeah. So this is downtown Spokane.
Yeah.
So and I think the term that the AI used was mid-sized or mid.
Yeah, it's the red one on the left side of the A shaped from this side. That small red roof.
Yep. That actually stands several stories.
Yeah. The renderation depiction in the simulator is so and so sometimes.
Well, there's returning to the go ahead.
Yeah, there's a new actually game coming up now, next month, November 19th. I was part of the so-called alpha build testing out the servers, but it's the same developer, Microsoft and Azure. I think the cloud computing thing that makes this happen, and their one is able to walk on the ground in that game.
Oh wow!
And they are talking about so-called first-person game type or like graphics on the ground also. Meaning, I'm not sure how familiar you are with games, but all the shooting games and such. You have
quite a bit.
Yeah. So they are claiming that with time, it should be that detailed, walking on the ground. And I actually had the possibility. I'm loading to my channel, the same channel, Entired Retreat. I'm gonna load a couple of videos relating to that time, and they emphasize that don't look at the graphics. This is just a test, but in any case, it was more or less as beautiful as this one, and this is a full game that has been out for 4 years. But then I walked on the base of the Eiffel Tower and in the Lofoten, roughly translated to or directly translated to Lyngsfot in Norway, a beautiful rural fjord area, outdoor fjord area.
Wow.
Walked along the different locations on the ground. So New York was one also, but yeah, not the final build, but yeah, a short mention in here in the beginning. So if you really like this concept, you are welcome on the third time on the new simulator, and hopefully we can walk on the ground, then maybe around the clock tower.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah, hopefully the clock tower is actually rendered then, but yeah.
I'm sure it will be from the ground.
Yeah.
I'm sure it will be. This is the convention center here that you're flying over now. I believe this is a new hotel that went in not too long ago. Davenport Hotel is the one there. You can see the kind of older looking building there. It's a very historic hotel, but then they opened a couple of newer hotels. It's called the Davenport Towers, and so they're just quite the hotel mogul down there.
Yeah.
But the Davenport is I mean, it was a luxury hotel in the 1920s and and so forth, and it's still is a destination. Yeah, so when you get this far out, you can see like only certain buildings are very high. I'm not seeing the another iconic skyline piece is the there's a steamworks plant that has a couple of towers that go up like smokestacks. They'd be probably straight ahead of where you're at now visually. So if you took a front view, we might be able to spot them. But
yeah, I'm trying to Google it at the same time here. Is it on the south side here? On the south side of the river?
It is on the south side of the river.
Steam Plant Hotel. That's something I find. I'm not sure if that's the one, but
yeah, that is.
Is it? All right, let's see. It should be actually quite close. On
it's
our
on
left
the
side
southwestern part.
Yeah,
southwestern part of the downtown area.
Canada Island. There's the or was it here? There's the actual clock tower. So it's south of the clock tower. I'm gonna take a left here. I'm getting good at this because I'm looking at the different roads and stuff.
that red roofed building down there, I think that's a fire department, firehouse. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, it's actually similar in Google Earth. It's within a rondel. Yeah, that's the one. Yeah, I'm navigating with a tablet. I'm not sure, 12-inch tablet or something in front of me with Google Earth open, so I can kind of reference back and forth. And here, where our nose is right now, should be the Steamworks.
Yeah, it's not rendering it with the towers that they have. They have a pair of towers.
Yeah, it should be exactly beneath us right now.
Well, I thought maybe your viewers would get a good look at it, but it doesn't look like it's gonna render that. I guess they'll have to Google that and the clock tower.
Yeah. I usually encourage them to do so sometimes. Being around different castles and stuff also, old castles, and it's sad when it's a 2D picture on the ground and it's not rendered in 3D. But yeah, fingers crossed that the next iteration, difficult word, the next model
iteration, yeah.
Iteration, yeah. That it then includes more detailed scenery.
But swinging back to the character discussion.
Yeah, second or third time, the charm.
Third time's the charm. I think where storytelling and showing things about the character are concerned, I think you can be more subtle there, and you can expect your audience to be quote unquote smarter because where factual things are concerned, that's not intelligence based, and that's not whether we're talking about intellect or we're talking about emotional intelligence. It's just factual. I mean, and people don't feel stupid when you spoon feed them something that's factual because they don't know what they don't know, and that doesn't make them dumb. Where we're figuring something out intellectually or intuiting something on a emotional or human behavioral level is concerned, I think you have to give your audience a lot of credit there. And so I will try to lean towards being a little bit more subtle sometimes. Sometimes too much so. I've had readers say, I don't understand what the person's getting at or what the reaction is. And sometimes you have to flesh it out a little bit. But I would rather be a little more subtle and let the reader figure it out than insult them essentially by, telling them how they should view this reaction. I mean, let them draw their own conclusion. And hopefully it's the same one that I intended. But even if it isn't, that's the great thing about art. You can, two people can see the same piece of art, listen to the same song, watch the same movie, and come to a completely different conclusion. And while the authorial or directorial intent may have been different, that doesn't make that person wrong, because it's art, and that's the way art works. That's
a slight burden of
another
my
reason.
Thank you.
Yeah, I don't think you should sweat it. I think you should just explore it and enjoy it. And I think that's something that comes through. If you are into the story, if you are into the characters, if there's love and excitement in the creation of it, that comes through to the reader. And I think that's important. If on the other hand, you're just going through the motions, just putting out a piece of corporate soulless content, well, that comes through too. And no matter how slick it is, people are going to see through that. You could have a really slick book cover and really slick, well-crafted blurb or description. And yet if people get in there and read it and it doesn't have any soul, and the characters don't speak to them, I don't think they're going to hang around for very long. And that's why I come back to character. I always come back to character. Everything should be, at the end of the day, to me, it should be character driven. Even if you're paying attention, I mean, obviously you have to pay attention to plot and you have to pay attention to setting. And I mean, I'm getting ready to launch a fantasy series in January, and you know, a lot goes into that, and you know, the world and the settings and the laws, like you talk about, and what the story is going to be about. All of that is huge. But I think if you don't have characters that people want to spend time with, then no matter how interesting they think your world might be, whether that's the world of the fictional Spokane where people are fighting crime, or it's the world in a fantasy realm where they're fighting each other or dragons or whatever it is that you're focused on, if they don't care about the characters, then I don't think they stay very long, and or if they do, I don't think they come back necessarily or feel any urgency to do so. And let's face it, there's so much content out there in so many different platforms. I mean, you have content right here, right?
Yeah.
Sure, absolutely. But people could come watch your YouTube channel and get something. They could go play a video game and get something. They could watch a Netflix TV series, or they could watch a movie on Netflix or on any other platform.
Huge amount of entertainment
TikTok,
in general.
And so I guess I mean, unfortunately, sometimes that results in people pandering to the lowest common denominator. But the reality is that you have to have a reason for people to want to spend time with you. And so, like what you're doing here, flying around as part of the interview and discussion process, that gives them another reason to want to be here. But if you were boring and your guests were boring, then they could just go get Flight Simulator and fly around themselves, right? So why are they here? They're here for, you know, they're here for the conversation. They're here for you, and then whoever you might bring on, and then whatever you might be talking about. That's the same, I think, with a book or a television show or a movie. They have to be into the characters. Now, I could be wrong. There may be people out there who could care less about the characters, and that's all fine and good. You get what you want to get out of any content.
As you said, art covers a lot. Yeah,
I've yet to have somebody tell me. I don't think I've ever had anybody say the very best thing about your books is the plots. I love the plots. I've never had anybody complain that the plots are bad by any means. I put effort into the plots, but it's never the first thing off of somebody's lips when they talk about what they like or don't like. about it. And so I stick by it. I think characters is everything. And so, in Silence of the Dead, Colin and I worked really hard to craft characters and that were each very individual and very memorable. In the Stefan Kopriva series, I've worked really hard over the 5 books to convey a tortured person who has a great deal of guilt and who's trying to find some redemption. And then in the River City series, it's an ensemble cast. So I've worked really hard to explore characters who are very real and who are doing the best job they can at a very difficult profession that's getting harder and harder every day. And they don't always do a good job. Sometimes they fail. Frequently in this series. I mean, for the longest time, and I guess even still, sort of the tagline for River City was that the cops are the good guys, but they don't always win, and never without a cost. And to me, that's real. I mean, I've been around law enforcement since 1993, and even after I've retired, I have friends who are still in the field, and I write crime fiction and I teach police leadership, and so I'm interacting with people in the profession today on a frequent basis, and it continues to be a truth that this is a difficult profession that gets more difficult all the while, and the overwhelming majority of people that I've encountered who are in this profession are good people trying to do the very best job that they can. And it's an unfortunate truth that there are some who have done a poor job and in a very public way. And let's face it, when police officers make mistakes, I mean, this comes up in the fiction, but it comes up in the real world too. When police officers make mistakes, because the stakes are often high, so are the repercussions. And this may be something that we talked about in my last visit, but it's an unfortunate truth in the real world. It's a very fortunate thing for storytelling purposes. I mean, the fact that the stakes are high almost automatically, really, you don't have to work too hard to make the stakes high. And when things go wrong, people suffer very real consequences that are not small. I mean, there's life and death. There's people's livelihood at stake, their freedom, and so it's an awesome responsibility. And I mean that in the old sense of the word, not in the more jargon sense. It's a very big responsibility. It's a very huge responsibility, and most people live up to it every single day in a variety of ways. But some people fail, and unfortunately, those failures can be very public and have a very large impact on the people that they involve, and then on the profession as a whole. I mean, let's face it, 30, 40 years ago, if something bad happened in Jacksonville, Florida, everybody in Jacksonville would be aware of it, maybe in the surrounding cities, and it would have an impact. But today, that same event is, it's a much smaller world. So that same event is all over YouTube and all over the news and all over social media. And somebody in Spokane is going to have to deal with the fallout of a bad event that occurred in Jacksonville. People are going to bring it up. It's going to color the way that they interact with them and so forth. And so it's just a whole different situation even than when I did it, when I did the job. And so I'm not up to present day in the River City series yet. I'm the next book will be at about 2012, so I'm about a little more than a decade behind. But I'm slowly catching up, and so those are factors that will play into the experiences that those officers have.
Yeah, all right. So it has been a fascinating flight, to say the least, and here we have learned actually that what the real location, or some of the real locations in general, where your books are taking place. So hopefully that's kind of something that the audience likes here in this format of entire retreat as a show. But ending here soon. Entire retreat itself can be found on YouTube and Spotify. Both of those platforms host video or gameplay/video with audio commentary, and then we have the RSS feed to Apple and Podchaser and whatnot, different locations, and we have a Patreon for those who wanna support us further past liking, sharing, subscribing, and whatnot, commenting. You know the drill. But Frank, let you have the stage here. In the end, you can promote whatever you want and summarize your errand, your desired errand. As you being a part of the show, and thank you for being a part of the show for a second time now. So compared to the first time, we have actually now, I think, pinpointed areas that more or less then connect to the art you create, your books and such. So yeah, the stage is yours.
Well, I mean, thanks for having me again. It's a unique experience flying around and talking about stuff. You're in Finland, correct?
Yeah, southern Finland, yes.
So I wouldn't say that my work is like the Scandinavian crime fiction that is pretty popular in tone exactly, but I would say that folks who like that slightly darker, character-driven sort of mystery and crime fiction, they might enjoy. They might enjoy some of my work, particularly maybe the SpoCompton series or the River City series, strictly because it is gritty crime fiction. It is realistically depicted, and of course, it's amped up to 11, and it's fiction. But so if people want to check out my work, I'm at frankzafiro.com. That's Zafiro.com. There's a link there to my other two websites where I write science fiction and fantasy as Frank Scalise, and then I write some books that are heartwarming humor and drama under my given name. Also some hockey books. If you have kids who love hockey, I've got a middle grade hockey series and a kids book that you can read to your kids called Sam and the Magic Hockey Gear. All three of the websites have links to the other two. And there's also links there to my direct buy store, the Code 4 Press bookstore, where all of my work is available. And the cool thing about that, I suppose, is everything's cheaper than retail. So you save money, considerable amount if you buy bundles. And even though you pay less, I still get significantly larger share of that than if you buy through Amazon or those other places. So I encourage people to go there, code4press.com. But wherever you want to get your books, audiobooks or print is fine with me, and they should be available through all the regular platforms. I do have a newsletter that I send out every probably quarterly. I mean, I send it out when I have something to say. It's not constant, so people don't get spammed with newsletter articles, but they do get updates every 2, 3, 4 months. And of course, I'm available and active on Facebook and the site formerly known as Twitter and Instagram as well. Pretty easy to find there. And I guess the last thing I'd say is I am, as Frank Scalise, writing not just science fiction but fantasy. I have a fantasy series called Seasons of Wither. The first book in that series is called A Burnt Summer, and I'm going to be launching a Kickstarter for that most likely in January. Kind of waiting on the remainder of the art, including the book cover, before I pull the trigger on the date. But if you are a Kickstarter person or like to back Kickstarter projects, I'm going to give that a try and see if that's a viable way to go about publishing fantasy And that's Seasons of Wither is at present a quadrilogy, a 4-book series. And the first one, like I said, is called A Burnt Summer. And it is essentially fantasy written the way I write my crime fiction. It's gritty, it's realistic. It's not, it's not high fantasy, it's low fantasy. There are no elves and dragons. Not that I don't like elves and dragons, I do, but not in this series. And so folks can keep an eye out for that. Certainly, if they follow me on social media, I'll be announcing when that Kickstarter goes live. And I have high hopes for it. So I hope to see some fantasy from you at some point here. I hope you get out of that loop and get that draft finished. We'll have to have a chat offline about that. Maybe I can be of assistance.
Yeah. I'm gonna remember that. Well, that's kind of it. Remember, folks, think of Laura, Nor Shadowed Heart, and In Silence of the Dead. Those 3, on top of all the others just mentioned. But yeah, if nothing else, I thank you, Frank, again. And for those who watch this, thank you for being with us on this flight around Spokane and Deer Park. And see you in the next one.